Good afternoon, Lynette Oxley here for TACSHAC Tactical TV. Today we have Omogolo. She's from GBV Monitor South Africa. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Lynette.
Tell me a little bit about yourself. Who are you?
Omogolo is, I always say, a Macy from the Vrystaat.
A Macy from the Vrystaat.
Yeah, born and bred from a small town, 60 kilometers outside of Bloemfontein. And I had the opportunity to go further my studies at UCT. So I majored in English language and literature, gender studies and media studies there. And, you know, that has really been the foundation of the work that I have done, you know, since graduating. I have worked for the City of Cape Town. I have worked for the Democratic Alliance in Parliament as a research and media officer. I then went to ENCA, where I worked as a news writer. I worked at Radio 702 as a producer. I produced a number of shows there, the breakfast show, the afternoon drive show. And, you know, I used to work for Herman Mashaba when he was the mayor of the city of Joburg. And from there, I then went to be the spokesperson at the city of Tshwane when it was still led under the DA administration. So that's just an idea
where you came from.
That's where I've come from. And, you know, now I am the founder and the executive director of GBV Monitor. But that's just a snapshot of Omogolo and who I am.
But that's your history is what makes you today. And why did you start the GBV Monitor? What stands behind it? And you stepped out of your comfort zone to do this. Nobody paid you to do this. It's something that you've doing from your heart. Tell us a little bit about what GBV Monitor is and why did you start it?
You know, like you're saying, something that I'm doing, you know, from my heart. This really is my heart. You know, I decided to found this organization really out of my own frustrations with the kind of reporting that the media covers in terms of GBV. But it wasn't just about reporting, but about the kind of conversations that we have about GBV. And I decided that I need to move from complaining and being frustrated to taking action and doing something, and even if it's at a small scale, but it is something rather than nothing.
We talked about activism, action and not activism. We talked about that as well. Because I said the 16 days of activism, which is I think from the 15th or 16th of November to about the 10th of December. The United Nations says it's activism against no violence against for children and women and child abuse. But yeah, you actually taking action rather than just talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we have this 16 days, you know, of activism, you know, of no violence against women and children. And this is part of what I find problematic about the kind of language that we use about GBV. In South Africa, you know, we really are in a crisis when it comes to GBV, but we seem to only care about it in August
days.
Because it's Women's Month, for 16 days, because, you know, it's been decided that this is the calendar where we care about this thing. And this is something that happens every day, right? And this is really part of the work that we do at the Monitor, that we are a dedicated resource that focuses specifically on GBV. We don't just pop out of nowhere in August and during a campaign. So, you know, it's really about the language, taking action, and that's what we do.
Yeah, we talked about it when we met earlier. We're trying to empower women. it's not to not from my side, from the Girls on Fire side. We're talking about not being victims. I'm every woman. We don't need to be special. We don't need special months. We don't need special days. I'm actually against Women's Day. A lot of people criticize me for that. But I'm just saying, please treat me with equality. I want to be treated like you treat everybody else. I don't need, if you say to me, oh, you're special, I always make a joke, you're special, because you need something different. I just want to be treated equally like you would treat anybody else, and that's quite important. And it's not something that just happens in August during Women's Month, or on Women's Day, or during the 16 days. Although it's a nice time to promote certain programs and stuff like that. So what is GBV Monitor specifically? What are you trying to achieve with it?
Right. So, when I founded GBV Monitor South Africa, the idea behind it was really to elevate our conversation, how we talk about GBV, what we understand about it, and what we can do about it. As much as our focus is on GBV reportage, we conduct research. That's part of an offshoot of what we do. The other offshoot of what we do is that we're really interested in a systemic evaluation of the criminal rural justice system. And the last, but really, what encompasses our work is the GBV Tracker, which exists online on our website. And the idea behind the tracker is to tell a story about if I, Omogolo, decide to report that my partner has beaten me up, if I decide to report a rape, what is my experience with the criminal justice system going to be?
You talked about the NPA, and so you obviously use some of the information from the NPA as well?
Yes. So we have been fortunate to have, tapped into networks that have given us access to the NPA, where we are in communication with their provincial spokespersons across our 9 provinces, and they provide us with information specific to GBV to us, and they help us to populate our tracker. Our other source are the media, so whatever stories that we pick up online, on radio, on TV, we can then contact the particular journalists to say, this is who we are, this is the work that we do, and would you be of assistance to help us populate our tracker? So we really have been fortunate in that we have tapped into networks and people and organizations who believe in our work and can relate to the kind of work that we do, and they contribute what they can to us.
I've always said, so my background is actually, I've got library and information science background, and it's always access to information is extremely important, because without information you can't make informed decisions. And that's basically what you're saying. You're trying to get the best information, especially from the rural area where there's no information really. There's very little information of what is happening and reporting and stuff like that in the rural areas. Am I correct?
That's correct. That's correct. It's that much more difficult for women in the rural areas to even have access to information through the internet, if there's a Wi-Fi in those areas, to see where they can get help or where they can familiarize with the information that they need. It's that much more difficult for people in rural areas to approach a police station or to attend a trial when they need to appear, because in most cases we do know that they don't have the financial means to access that kind of thing. So that is why we saw that it was important for us to really look for those incidents in rural areas, to do 2 things really. To highlight what happens in rural areas, because we know that the media already has an urban bias. It's
Absolutely.
very easy for the media to cover what happens in urban areas, but it's not a deliberate urban bias. I think it's just
It's
out
logistics.
of, it's just out of the resources. Every company has limited resources and priorities, and that's just the reality with the media. Someone has to do the work. So I saw the gap in that, and I decided that, well, I'm going to focus more on what happens in rural areas.
Okay. So reporting, if you look at the police stations, to actually get what is wrong with reports, because sometimes the police, if a lady goes and a woman goes and reports a rape, firstly the police officer might not want to take a statement, and when they do take the statement, it's not correct. There's not enough information that gets taken, and then prosecution and stuff like that obviously falls through if nothing happens. Can you talk a little bit about that?
You know, the fact that women even have the courage to come forward is an accomplishment enough. Absolutely. Right? Because we know that there are so many other incidents that don't get reported from people who don't want to come forward. So we would expect that because we are in this kind of crisis, there would be support mechanisms to make that journey that much easier for survivors. But that's not the case. You know, I have had women come forward to say they want to report this incident, and they are told right here in Johannesburg, they are told that, well, we can't take a statement because your partner is going to lose their job if you go ahead with this. I've had a woman who is based in Limpopo who has reported numerous incidents of her former partner coming over to her house to threaten her. This man eventually burned her house down, and the police told her to move next door because she is too far. So this gives...
It's ridiculous.
It's honestly unbelievable when you hear the stories.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have had this knowledge had I not started doing this work. I thought I knew what the picture was, but once you're doing the work, you experience it completely differently. And it really tells you that our criminal justice system is just not adequate. They are not taking it seriously enough, because if they did, our police officers would be able to respond in a gender-sensitive manner to women and children who come forward appropriately, right?
And legally, because sometimes they actually do not, if they do not want to take a report, they're actually not acting legally.
They won't take a report. They will take the report and not actually formalize it. Annexures will go missing, you know, in your case. So there's so many ways that police officers sabotage their own work, and it's a shame. But this is just where we are.
We also talked about even sometimes the police becomes abusers. There's been quite a couple of incidences that somebody goes and reports the rape and then gets raped by the policeman. So obviously it is a societal problem, it's a police problem, and it's something that needs to be addressed. I also think about, in terms of, if you look at the society as in a wider sense, it is really important that I know one of the ladies that got our Fighting Spirit Award was raped. She had problems reporting it, and when she told her parents, she was shamed. So it's not just it's a much wider problem. We need to look at it from all aspects. And as I said, the GBV Monitor is looking at that you can actually report it in much more detail. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else that you would like to add?
I think what is important to emphasize right now is that, like you were saying, you know, our own family members aren't willing to support us, and those are the people who are meant to come, you know, to be at your beck and call.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we shouldn't have this conversation here this is an important platform, but we need to have those conversations in intimate spaces. We need to have those
conversations
at the dinner table, as much as that's not the perfect dinner table conversation. We need to have the conversation in the workspace. We need to have it at church. There is no place where we shouldn't be talking about this, because it happens every day, and it happens to people who are known, to survivors. And, you know, I just have to applaud the work that you're doing. You know, you are speaking about 16 days of action, you know, and it should be emphasized that it's not just, you know, girls on fire who should be taking action. It should be everyone.
Everybody. I'm talking about empowering women as such. As I said, we don't need to be victims. We do not need to. Where does it come from that they say women are the weaker sex? We're not the weaker sex. We might be physically weaker, but we're definitely not the weaker sex. If you look at the history, if you look at Joan of Arc, you look at Boadicea, you look at some of the very strong women in our country, that's been really, really strong. We do not need to be victims. We can take this empowerment in our own hands, which is really, really important. You also talked about the workplace earlier. It's very, the reporting of gender-based violence in the workplace is also important. Do you want to expand on that?
Yes. What we don't talk about often enough is violence that happens in the workplace. And I think that's because we assume that because it's a workplace, therefore everybody conducts themselves in a professional manner and everybody is prim and proper, which is not always the case.
No,
so corporates, companies, you know, employers need to be prioritizing sexual harassment policies. They need to be having conversations from the point of employing a new candidate to say, this is, you know, our code of conduct. It includes sexual harassment and a proper way to conduct yourself in this professional space. We have a zero tolerance to this sort of behavior. And it should be part of, you know, the organizational culture. You know, that's what people talk about, the organizational culture of the organization, where women know that if my boss threatens me with not promoting me if I don't sleep with him, I can go to HR and I know I will be supported. I will not be shamed. I will not be victimized, you know, to a point where I now feel that I need to resign because my prospects for promotion and development no longer exist.
Absolutely.
So that's definitely a conversation that we are definitely not having.
Okay, tell me, what do you need from our viewers and the people out there for your project to work? As we have chatted, this is your passion. It's not something that you got funded for, but it's something that's very close to your heart. So what would you like?
Support, funding, support, funding, support, funding.
Absolutely.
So as much as it's something that I'm doing, you know, out of the goodness of my heart, something that I'm passionate about and I'm committed to, in reality, it needs more than just me.
You can push it as far, but you can't push that by yourself.
Yes.
You need support.
Yes. So, you know, having funders on board would definitely be beneficial. But beyond just the funding, I think just an interest in making this work and really understanding what is GBV if you don't know, right? Because there's people who don't know.
No, they don't.
What is GBV? How does it manifest? What can I do about it? I think that can also take us, you know, much further.
Just by discussing it and putting it out in the open, I think that is it. For us, from our side, it's, we're all strong women and we can support each other. That's what I'm trying to do through the Girls on Fire campaign, is to actually build women up to be the best that they can be. And we can be very strong.
Yes.
Thank you very much, and I'm sure we'll see you again sometime on the show.
Soon enough.
Thank you very much. Have a good day. Thanks a lot.